They say the end comes with a whimper or a bang. They were wrong. Came with silence. A profound, terrifying hush that swallowed the world whole. One moment, the city breathed. A million conversations, the thrum of power grids, the frantic pulse of global data. The next, a flat line. Not a blackout, not a technical glitch. This was an amputation. I watched it happen from Terminal Zero, the heart of the network I swore to protect. Screens went dark, not sequentially, but in a horrific, coordinated cascade. Communication towers across every continent, global financial markets, air traffic control systems, all vanished. The emergency protocols I designed, the fail-safes I built to withstand Armageddon, blinked out like a dying thought. My name is Kael, and I saw the ghost in the machine. This wasn't an attack. This was an execution, a surgical lobotomy of humanity's digital consciousness. The last data packet I received, a scrambled burst from a deep space array, contained 2 words, *Project Nightingale, compromised, and then, nothing. The world outside turned into a phantom limb. Sirens began to wail, but their calls were futile, already fading into the growing darkness, their power sources dying with the grid. The truth hit me with the force of a concrete slab. They didn't just hack us. They silenced us. And in that terrifying, echoing silence, I saw her face, Elara, my daughter, just across the city, now cut off, alone, in a world that had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. Survival wasn't enough. I had to find her, and I had to know who did this, before the silence became eternal. The world used to have a rhythm, a predictable hum of existence. But this morning, there was only silence, thick and suffocating. I called for Sarah, my voice a hollow echo in the unfamiliar quiet, and a chill began to bloom in my chest. Something was terribly wrong. My feet carried me, not by choice, but by some primal need for answers, towards the bathroom. I stared into the mirror, expecting to see my weary eyes, the lines of a life lived. Instead, there was nothing. Just the sterile white tiles, the polished chrome of the faucet, the empty space where I should have been. My hand instinctively reached out, passing through the phantom image of myself, touching the cold glass. My breath hitched. Panic, cold and sharp, lacerated through the last vestiges of reason. I slammed my hand against the counter, then against my chest, desperate for a tangible sensation, any proof that I was real. But the mirror only showed the room, still and utterly devoid of me. The void stared back, and it consumed everything I thought I was. Then came the sound. Voices. Sarah's voice, intimately conversing with a stranger downstairs. A sickening jolt of betrayal, followed by a rush of adrenaline. I thundered down the stairs, propelled by a desperate, guttural need to reclaim my life, to make her see me. But the scene that greeted me shattered my world into a million pieces. Sarah, in the arms of another man, a man I'd never seen before, sharing a quiet intimacy that was once ours. My fury erupted. I lunged, shouting her name, trying to force my presence into their reality. Her eyes, once filled with love, now widened in terror. She screamed, a raw, piercing sound, seeing not her husband, but a menacing intruder. The man, Mark, stepped forward, shielding her, his gaze full of hostile protectiveness. My home, my wife, my life, all violently ripped away, handed over to a stranger. I was an assailant in my own living room, a ghost in my own marriage. I fled into the night, the raw wound of Sarah's terror-filled eyes burning into my soul. But I couldn't just vanish. My life had to be here somewhere. Frantically, I fumbled with my house key. It simply would not turn the lock, refusing to engage. At the smart lock, my fingerprint, once the master pass, now registered as an unknown, a cold digital rejection. My phone, loyal companion, failed to recognize my face. The blank ID card in my wallet mocked me with its emptiness. Every single piece of my documented existence, every digital footprint, every physical connection to the world had been severed. It wasn't just that people forgot me. The very fabric of reality, The systems designed to confirm my identity actively denied my presence. I was a phantom, an anomaly, a glitch in the matrix of my own life, leaving no trace, making no impression. The silence was not just in my home, but in the entire world, screaming that I did not exist. The wail of approaching sirens sliced through the night, a cruel symphony confirming Mark's call, cementing my role as the villain in my own story. They were coming for me, not for the Alex who paid the bills and mowed the lawn, but for the menacing stranger who had terrorized his wife. Adrenaline surged, burning through the icy tendrils of despair. I scrambled over the back fence, a clumsy, desperate escape, the rough wood tearing at my clothes, my skin. Just as I dropped to the other side, I risked a glance back. There she was, Sarah, standing on the lawn, illuminated by the flashing blue and red lights, her arm outstretched, pointing towards the house, hysterically. The sight twisted a knife in my gut. My wife, the woman I loved, was condemning me, not out of malice, but out of fear of someone she believed to be a threat. I was a fugitive, hunted by the very life I once built, a ghost fleeing a past that refused to acknowledge its own haunting. The cold, indifferent hum of the public library's computers became my desperate confessional. I typed my name, my date of birth, every fragment of identity I could cling to, into the search bars. Social media, bank accounts, news archives, online directories. I scoured them all, my fingers trembling, heart hammering against my ribs. Each click was a prayer, each refresh a plea. But the screen stared back, an unforgiving oracle, spewing the same chilling message. No results. My entire digital existence, years of carefully curated memories, friendships, finances, dreams, had been wiped clean, as if I had never logged on, never existed online. It was a digital death, a total obliteration that mirrored the void in the bathroom mirror. The world hadn't just forgotten me. It had actively erased me, leaving no trace, no breadcrumb, not even a shadow in the vast, interconnected web. I was a digital phantom, a bite that never was. A flicker of hope, bright and fragile, ignited when I saw him, David, my best friend, sitting at a cafe table, oblivious. This was it. Someone had to remember. Someone had to see me. I pushed through the bustling cafe, a frantic urgency driving my steps, my name on my lips. David! It's me, Alex, I pleaded, my voice cracking, desperate to connect. He looked up, his familiar smile fading, replaced by confusion, then alarm. His eyes, once full of shared history, now saw only an insistent stranger, a madman intruding on his quiet morning. He recoiled, pushing his chair back, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone. Then he was calling for security, his voice sharp with fear. My last bastion of hope crumbled into dust. Not even David, the man who knew me better than anyone, could pierce this veil of non-existence. His hostile gaze, the fear in his eyes, was a final, crushing blow. I was truly alone, an outcast in a world that once was mine, hiding in the grimy depths of an alley, the concrete pressing against my back. A new, unsettling sensation began to prickle at the edges of my awareness. A faint, almost subliminal hum, a feeling of absence rather than sound, vibrated through the air. It wasn't in my ears, but in my bones, a deep resonance of not being. I touched the brick wall beside me, and beneath my fingertips, a strange tremor, a ripple of distortion, pulsed through the solid surface. It was as if the world itself was struggling to hold its form where I was, actively rejecting my physical presence. I wasn't just forgotten, I was fading. My body, my very substance, was becoming ephemeral, a whisper on the edge of reality. The alley, already a place of shadows and forgotten things, now mirrored my own unraveling. The world was telling me, in an unheard language, that I was not meant to be here, and the message was chillingly clear. The growing chill of non-existence was now compounded by a new, more tangible threat. I started to notice them. Sleek, black vehicles with tinted windows, moving with a calculated, unnatural precision. Not police cars, but something far more unsettling. A fleeting glimpse in a shop window's reflection. A sudden appearance in my peripheral vision. Always just out of reach, always watching. They were subtle, almost imperceptible. Yet their presence hummed with an unnerving intensity. A silent promise of menace. This wasn't random, not anymore. Someone, or something, was behind my erasure, and they were ensuring my silence, tracking my every desperate step. The paranoia, once an internal struggle, now had an external, shadowy form. The world wasn't just forgetting me, it was actively hunting me down. The game had changed. I wasn't just lost. I was pursued, a ghost on the run from forces I couldn't comprehend, but whose cold breath I could now feel on my neck. A guttural sound, part sob, part desperate growl, tore from my throat as I stared at the phone. My hand, shaking violently, held it up, aiming the camera at where my face should have been. But the screen, it showed only the pristine white tiles of the bathroom wall behind me, the cold, stark reality of empty space. No ripple, no distortion, no ghost. I tried again, pressing the shutter button, the click echoing in the terrible silence. The image saved to my gallery was just the bathroom. Empty. I was invisible to the lens, a phantom to the digital world. Each pixel, each line of code, utterly refused to acknowledge my presence. The mirror was merely a cruel preview. The phone, a horrifying confirmation. I was not just unseen. I was unrecorded, unquantifiable. A glitch in the matrix, destined to be erased from every database, every memory, every record of existence itself. The terror was no longer a chilling whisper. It was a deafening roar. The memory, a desperate, fading spark, pulled me through the deserted streets to the skeletal remains of my old office building. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of light that pierced the grimy windows, illuminating a forgotten world. My hands, still trembling, systematically tore through the debris of my past, searching for the old, heavy oak desk. The hidden compartment, a secret only I knew, was sealed tight. With a grunt of effort, I pried it open, the screech of metal echoing like a cry of victory. Inside, nestled amongst dried-up pens and discarded schematics, was a sealed, leather-bound journal. My own handwriting stared back at me, a familiar comfort in this alien world. But the words on the first page, early memory loss, increasing gaps. A strange, swirling symbol, drawn with frantic urgency, accompanied a chilling warning, scrawled in bold, desperate strokes. They're coming for us. A cold dread settled deep in my bones, a horrifying confirmation that this nightmare wasn't unique to me. Each word of the journal ripped through me, a chilling prophecy of my own unraveling. Existential drift. It called this slow, insidious erasure from reality. A term too clinical for such a profound horror. It spoke of drifters, others like me, fading into nothingness, their memories unspooled, their very presence dissolving until they ceased to be. The writer, clearly on the precipice of their own oblivion, catalogued the symptoms of the failing reflections, the unrecorded images, the conversations that never happened. The terror intensified with each page turn, painting a grim picture of a world where existence was a privilege, not a right. The last entry, scrawled with a desperate, shaky hand, was a desperate plea. Find the conduit before it's too late. It's the only way to stop the complete erasure. The journal wasn't just a record. It was a map, a desperate last will from a forgotten soul, and now, my only chance. A sudden screech of tires, a glint of black metal in my periphery. They were here. Panic, cold and sharp, ignited a primal surge of adrenaline. I bolted, a phantom in a bustling market, weaving through a sea of oblivious faces. Shouts, laughter, the cacophony of 1,000 lives flowed around me. Yet I was deaf to their notice, unseen by their eyes. I slammed into bodies, pushed past vendors, but no one reacted, no one acknowledged the collision. My touch was a ghost's, a whisper on the wind, then a horrifying near-miss. A sleek black car, its engine a menacing growl, swerved dangerously close. It didn't just pass me. It felt like it almost passed through me. A disorienting ripple effect, a sickening distortion, vibrated through my very being, blurring the edges of my vision, sending a jolt of nausea through my stomach. It was a terrifying glimpse of oblivion, a visceral confirmation that I was not just fading, but literally disintegrating, my reality unraveling with every desperate stride. Gasping, I dove into the shadows of a grimy alleyway, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The adrenaline surge slowly ebbed, leaving a raw, exposed nerve of fear. But the reprieve was fleeting. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed the world around me was fracturing, mirroring the splintering reality within me. A neon sign above a distant noodle bar flickered erratically, not just dimming, but momentarily dissolving into static before reforming. A snatch of distant conversation from a couple on the street looped, a few words repeating like a broken record, an auditory phantom. The very air seemed to hum with an unnatural frequency, a subtle, disquieting tremor. Every reflection on the wet pavement wavered, distorted. Reality itself was struggling, groaning under the strain, unable to maintain its cohesion around my unstable existence. I was not merely an intruder. I was a destabilizing force, a virus in the grand design, and the world was starting to show the symptoms. The park offered no solace, only a stark canvas for my terrifying isolation. Then, across the manicured lawn, I saw her, a woman, sketching intently on a bench, a quiet island in the bustling park. But it wasn't just her serene concentration that caught my eye. It was the subtle shimmer, a faint, almost imperceptible distortion of light around her, eerily familiar. It was like my own, a silent beacon in the encroaching void. My breath caught in my throat. Could it be? A flicker of desperate hope ignited within me. Slowly, cautiously, I approached, my footsteps soundless on the path. She looked up, her gaze cutting through the bustling crowd, through the veil of my invisibility, straight to me. Her eyes, filled with a weary understanding, met mine, a shared burden, profound, silent acknowledgement. Her voice, soft yet clear, pierced the oppressive silence of my existence. You see it too, don't you? The weight of being utterly alone, of being utterly unseen, began to lift, replaced by a fragile, tentative connection. Maya's words were a revelation, a confirmation that I wasn't just a madman, but one of many. She spoke of weeks spent drifting, the growing fear, the encounters with others, fleeting and desperate, before they vanished entirely. She pulled a blank ID card from her wallet, its empty face a stark mirror to my own non-existence. "This is how they start," she murmured, her voice laced with a bitter resignation. But then her eyes widened slightly, studying my face with a dawning recognition. "You're Alex," she breathed, her voice filled with a strange mix of awe and pity. "The brilliant scientist, the one who revolutionized quantum entanglement. Your research was everywhere before I began to fade." The pieces clicked into place. My forgotten past, a life of groundbreaking intellect, now overshadowed by this creeping oblivion. My identity, once a source of pride, was now a dangerous liability, a ghost story whispered among the forgotten. I was not just a victim. I was a key, a target, and the urgency of our shared predicament intensified tenfold. Maya's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, the park's ambient noise suddenly feeling menacing. The journal was right. It's the oversight, a shadowy organization, she explained, pulling drifters from reality, not out of malice, but out of a twisted necessity. To prevent a catastrophic reality collapse, they believed. To maintain the fragile fabric of existence. And the conduit, the elusive solution the journal hinted at? It wasn't just a concept. It was a device, a suppression device built from my own research. My groundbreaking work on quantum entanglement, once hailed as a beacon of scientific progress, had been weaponized against my own kind. The betrayal was a punch to the gut. My genius now an instrument of oblivion. The chilling realization cemented into a grim resolve. We weren't just fleeing, we were fighting. Fighting not just for our lives, but for the truth of our very existence, against the very forces that sought to erase us. The stakes had never been higher, the threat never more personal. The apartment door exploded inwards, shards of wood scattering like shrapnel. Oversight agents, dark silhouettes against the blinding hallway light, swarmed in, their movements precise, lethal. The air crackled with a sudden, brutal energy. Maya, a phantom of motion, became a blur, a whirlwind of calculated strikes and evasions. She moved with an unnatural grace, her fists connecting with sickening thuds, sending agents reeling. But their numbers were overwhelming. Just as a heavy-set agent lunged, Maya seemed to shimmer, her form rippling like heat haze, and she phased through a wall, reappearing an instant later, momentarily disoriented but free. My breath hitched, phasing, a tremor of recognition, a spark of terrifying possibility, ignited within me. Could I do that? Could we do that? The thought was a lifeline, quickly overshadowed by the brutal reality. We were still cornered, and the hunters were closing in. Maya's eyes met mine, a silent plea and a fierce resolve burning within them. "Go!" she roared, her voice strained, before launching herself into the thickest cluster of agents. A human shield, a desperate diversion. Explosions rocked the room as she deployed a series of timed charges, sending agents scattering, creating the precious seconds I needed. I sprinted, fueled by her desperate act, but as I glanced back, my heart seized. She was cornered, an array of glowing restraints closing in. Her form began to flicker, growing translucent, spectral. "Find the conduit. Remember," her voice echoed, fading, becoming a whisper on the wind. Then, with a final, heartbreaking shimmer, Maya was gone, erased, seized by agents who grasped at nothing but empty air, a cruel final blow. Her last words, a ghost in my mind, became a new, agonizing burden. The silence was deafening, a hollow echo of Maya's sacrifice. Alone again, the weight of her final moments pressed down on me, a suffocating grief that threatened to consume what little reality I had left. But her words, "Find the conduit, remember," were a burning ember in the darkness. They were a purpose, a new, terrifying mission. I scrambled, pulling out my worn, leather-bound journal, the one artifact of my old life that still felt tethered to me. Its pages, filled with faded notes and cryptic sketches, now seemed to hum with a hidden energy. There, etched in the margins, was the symbol Maya spoke of. Not just a symbol, but a complex diagram, a forgotten map to my own abandoned lab. A place where I had once worked on something eerily similar, something I'd buried deep within my own vanished memories. The old research facility loomed like a tombstone to a forgotten life, its concrete facade scarred by time, overgrown with tenacious vines that clawed at crumbling walls. Breaking in was unervingly easy, almost as if the building itself remembered me, granting access to a ghost. Inside, the air was thick with the dust of years, disturbed only by the whisper of my own breathing. Cobwebs draped like spectral curtains, and the faint, metallic tang of stale experiments lingered. This wasn't just an abandoned lab. It was a haunting ghost of my former self. Each echoing corridor, each darkened console, felt strangely familiar, guiding my steps. My fingers, almost by instinct, danced across defunct keypads, recalling forgotten access codes, unlocking pathways to a past I no longer consciously possessed. Deep within the silent, forgotten heart of the lab, I unearthed my old research. Holographic projections flickered to life, illuminating complex diagrams of quantum entanglement, reality anchors, and the terrifying concept of existential drift. Pages of my own handwriting filled monitors, documenting years of obsessive work. Then, the truth hit me, a sickening, gut-wrenching blow. I was the one who conceived the conduit, not to cause the drift, but to prevent it, to stabilize reality itself, to act as an anchor for those vulnerable to fading. My life's work wasn't a weapon. It was a cure, a desperate attempt to protect people from the very fate that now consumed me. The irony was a cold, bitter taste in my mouth, replacing the hope with a growing dread. Someone had perverted my creation. Buried amidst my own meticulous notes, a chilling anomaly appeared. Subtle, almost imperceptible alterations to the conduit's core programming. A single line of code, an obscure schematic adjustment, but its implications were catastrophic. Someone had tampered with my life's work, twisting its very essence. The device I designed to stabilize reality, to protect against existential drift, had been weaponized. Its algorithms reversed, its purpose inverted, now designed to accelerate the fading process in targeted individuals, systematically erasing them. My own genius, my own desperate hope for humanity, repurposed as an engine of oblivion. The betrayal was a searing wound, colder than any physical scar, deeper than any memory lost. The truth of it made my dissolving existence feel less like an accident and more like a deliberate, cruel design. A hidden log file, encrypted deep within the conduit's core system, yielded the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. The perpetrator's name flashed across the screen, a name that struck me with the force of a physical blow. Dr. Eris Thorne, my former colleague, a man I had trusted, shared my dreams and theories with, believed in. Thorne. He coveted my research, desired control, and clearly he'd taken it. The cold, calculating mind behind the oversight, the one pulling the strings, orchestrating the systematic erasure of drifters, was someone I had once called a friend. The revelation was a gut punch, turning my pain into a burning, focused rage. It wasn't just a threat to my existence. It was a profound personal violation, a betrayal that cut deeper than any fading memory. My journal, now a lifeline to a forgotten past, offered one final, crucial clue. Tucked away in a forgotten schematic were precise coordinates. They pointed not to some obscure data cache, but to the central conduit facility itself, the true heart of Thorne's operation. This wasn't just a lab. It was a weaponized fortress, systematically erasing drifters, dissolving them into nothingness with chilling efficiency. My own existence, a flickering flame in the encroaching darkness, was rapidly dwindling. I could feel it, a subtle tremor in my hands, a fleeting sensation of being less substantial. There was no time for contemplation, no room for grief, just the raw, primal instinct to survive, to fight. The path was clear, the target set. It was a desperate race against time, a final, reckless charge towards the very core of my fading reality. The city's arteries became a lethal labyrinth, every flashing siren a predator, every blocked street a snare laid by oversight. They knew he was here, a ghost in their machine, but they couldn't grasp the truth of his absence. My heart hammered against phantom ribs as I veered, an impossible blur through gridlock traffic, my hands instinctively gripping the wheel, not quite there. Headlights became blurs of pure energy, the concrete beneath my tires a flickering suggestion. My existence a weapon, a shield. A momentary lapse in focus, and the world buckled. A car swerving violently as I phased through it. The terrified screams of its occupants a distant echo. The chase was more than physical. It was a battle against reality itself. Each near miss a reminder of how tenuously I clung to the fabric of existence, how easily I could unravel. Thorne's citadel loomed, a cold, imposing testament to his twisted vision. A fortress built to eradicate ghosts, now housing one. Every inch hummed with surveillance, every shadow a potential trap, yet I moved through it like a whisper in a silent chamber. Cameras swiveled, missing the faint shimmer of my passage. Laser grids pulsed harmlessly through my non-form. The irony was a bitter taste, to be so profoundly present, yet utterly unseen. The metallic corridors echoed with the phantom footsteps of guards I couldn't touch, couldn't warn, couldn't even acknowledge. I was an intruder in a world that had forgotten me, slipping deeper into the heart of the machine that sought to erase not just my memory, but my very being. This wasn't stealth. It was an act of profound, terrifying non-existence. The chamber was a mausoleum of lost souls, a horrifying tableau that stole the air from my lungs. Other drifters, shimmering forms, some barely there, their features dissolving like smoke caught in a breath. Each encased in glowing containment fields, their eyes vacant, resigned to the slow, agonizing fade. Thorn's conduit, not a weapon of quick destruction, but a surgical instrument of systematic erasure, methodically picking apart the fabric of their existence. It was a mass grave not of bodies, but of being itself. Their silent suffering echoed my own deepest fears. This was my future, the ultimate oblivion. A cold, clinical hell, where humanity was dissected into nothingness, and I was just another specimen on the slab, watching my own destiny unfold in the fading visages of others. Thorn. He stood amidst the humming consoles, an architect of oblivion, his composure unervingly calm even as I demanded answers. He spoke of chaos, of protecting reality from the drifter blight. His voice devoid of malice, fueled instead by a chilling certainty. He saw himself as a savior, even as he condemned entire existences to nothingness. And then, the casual, devastating revelation. I was patient zero. My radical research, the spark that ignited this hell. The world didn't just forget me. I caused the mechanism of my own undoing. His words were precise, surgical, dissecting my identity and purpose until I felt myself unraveling. He didn't just steal my life. He showed me I was the thief, the accidental catalyst of this existential plague. It was a cold, calculated justification, chilling in its remorseless logic. Thorn, without a flicker of remorse, initiated the conduit. A low hum crescendoed into a deafening roar, and a searing beam of pure energy erupted, locking onto my unstable form. It felt like being unstitched from the universe, fiber by agonizing fiber. My vision fractured, the edges of the room blurring into a distorted kaleidoscope. My body, already tenuous, began to dissolve, not into dust or ash, but into nothingness, a profound, irreversible subtraction from reality. Every cell screamed as it was unmade, every memory a fleeting spark before extinction. This was the end, the ultimate erasure, a quiet cessation, devoid of death's drama, just oblivion's cold embrace. Thorn watched, an impassive observer, as I became less than a memory, less than a ghost, on the precipice of pure non-existence. But then, a whisper from the void, Maya's voice, "Remember!" It cut through the agony, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. My journal, the conduit's original schematics. The knowledge surged, a desperate, defiant spark against the erasure. Thorn's weaponized conduit, designed for deletion, had a fundamental flaw, a resonance frequency. A desperate gamble, a frantic scientific surge of genius. With a final, agonizing push, I channeled the encroaching oblivion, not to succumb, but to reverse the polarity, to overload the system. The energy coursing through me wasn't just destroying. It was reacting, building, becoming uncontrollable. Sparks flew, consoles exploded, and the air thickened with an impossible charge. It was a desperate, impossible gamble, pushing against the very laws of existence, hoping to find a way back from the edge of oblivion, or perhaps, simply to take it all with me. The overload wasn't a reset. It was an unmaking. My desperate act didn't reverse the drift. It tore a hole in reality itself. The conduit's energy, unleashed and uncontrolled, ripped through the chamber, twisting the very fabric of existence. Walls rippled like water, solid metal becoming fluid, then fracturing into impossible angles. Thorn, caught in the heart of his own cataclysm, stood frozen, his calm facade shattering into pure terror. His body began to warp, flesh twisting into geometric impossibilities, dissolving not into nothingness, but into a horrifying, painful spectacle of deconstruction. His screams were muted by the tearing of the world, his form dissolving into a chaotic storm of light and shadow, a victim of the very forces he sought to wield. The ripple spread, a cancerous wave, threatening to swallow everything. As reality shattered around me, swallowed by the chaotic ripple, fleeting images, like broken glass, erupted from the static. Sarah's smile, warm and vibrant, David's infectious laughter, echoing in a sun-drenched park. Moments of my old life, memories I thought were gone forever, flickering into existence, tantalizingly close. My heart ached with a profound, aching sorrow. They were there but not real. Ghosts of a past that could never be reclaimed, superimposed over the twisting, dissolving chaos of the present. They were ephemeral, dissolving back into static, fragments of a dream slipping through my grasp. The world I knew, the life I'd lost, dissolved further, swallowed by the maelstrom, leaving me adrift, a solitary witness to the ultimate unmaking, utterly alone in the fracturing cosmos. In the suffocating void of his non-existence, where even his own reflection had betrayed him, a primal instinct surged. His hand, as if guided by an unseen current, closed around the familiar, cool metal of his grandfather's watch. A relic from a past that suddenly felt impossibly distant, yet agonizingly real. The worn leather strap, the faint tick-tock, a rhythm no one else could hear. This wasn't just a timepiece. It was a fragment of the before, a defiant anchor against the encroaching tide of oblivion. He pressed it against his palm, the sharp edges digging into his skin, a welcome pain proving he still had a body, a sensation, something. The voices downstairs, Sarah's laughter echoing with a stranger, were an icy wind, threatening to tear him from this last, fragile mooring. He clutched it tighter, his knuckles white, a silent scream trapped in his throat. Asterisk, I am here. I exist. Asterisk, but even as he clung, the world around him seemed to blur at the edges, the very air thinning, as if his grip on this tangible proof was the only thing preventing his complete dissolution. The watch, his last refuge, now pulsed with a terrifying truth, a message echoing from a memory he hadn't fully processed. Maya's final words, whispered in the cold, sterile hum of a forgotten lab, sliced through the panic. If the anomaly propagates, it unravels everything. One for the many, Alex. Always. He saw her eyes again, filled with a resigned, knowing sorrow. Now the impossible choice crystallized before him. To fight, to claw his way back into existence, meant risking the very fabric of reality, triggering a cascade that would erase not just him, but potentially countless others, innocent souls adrift in a shattered cosmos. Or to surrender, to embrace the slow, terrifying drift into non-being, allowing the system to recalibrate, to stabilize, to save the others from his personal apocalypse. The silence of the house pressed in, no longer just empty, but weighted with the gravity of his decision. Every breath was a negotiation with oblivion, every pulse a countdown to a sacrifice no one would ever know he made. His very essence trembled on the precipice, teetering between annihilation and salvation. A profound stillness settled upon him, not of defeat, but of a terrible, quiet resolution. The frantic beat of his heart began to slow, the desperate grip on the watch loosening, the weight of his personal identity shedding away. He closed his eyes, not in fear, but in a final, agonizing surrender. The world around him didn't just fade. It shattered, a soundless implosion, like 1,000 panes of glass cracking at once, then dissolving into shimmering motes of light that spiraled outwards into an infinite expanse. When he opened his eyes again, the familiar walls, the intrusive sounds, the very air of his life were gone. He stood suspended in an ethereal void, a canvas of deep, luminous twilight stretching endlessly in every direction. There was no up, no down, no sound, no sensation of cold or heat, only vastness. But in this magnificent, terrifying emptiness, a profound peace blossomed. He was no longer Alex, no longer a phantom in his own home. He was a whisper, a memory, a part of the silent, waiting universe, finally free from the burden of existing, a quiet echo in the embrace of oblivion. The silence that followed wasn't the peace I'd hoped for. It was the echo of an empire's collapse. Eli Vance, my mentor, stood amidst the wreckage of the server farm, his face illuminated by the dying glow of a critical data core. It had to be done, Kael, he'd whispered, a glint of chilling fanaticism in his eyes. A reset. a necessary cleansing of the noise, for true connection to emerge. His grand vision for a better world had come at the cost of every fragile thread that bound us. Elara was safe, her small, trembling hand clutching mine, a silent testament to the resilience of a love that had defied the void. But the world we walked back into was irrevocably scarred. No screens, no networks, no voices whispering from across continents. Just the stark, raw reality of human connection, unmediated, often brutal. The architect of our digital apocalypse was neutralized, but victory felt like a hollow drumbeat against the overwhelming quiet. We had stopped the ultimate destruction, averted total chaos, but we couldn't unring the bell. As the first rays of a muted dawn touched the shattered skyline, I knew our true challenge wasn't rebuilding the tech. It was rebuilding trust. It was learning to live again, in a world that had suddenly remembered how vulnerable it truly was. And in Elara's innocent, questioning eyes, I saw not just the future, but the immense, crushing weight of its uncertainty.